Every era has its defining transformation. Ours is the rise of intelligence, where data connects the world, and AI reshapes every decision we make. But as machines grow smarter, it's our humanity that must grow stronger, because technology doesn't define progress. Leadership does.
WLDA is the world's premier forum for leadership in AI, bringing together global executives and industry pioneers to shape a fair digital world through collaboration, knowledge exchange, and thought leadership in data, digital, and AI. We believe the future of AI must be guided by empathy, ethics, and inclusion, where every algorithm reflects fairness and every leader drives impact with integrity. From New York to Singapore, from boardrooms to innovation labs, WLDA brings together the world's most forward-thinking leaders to share ideas, challenge boundaries, and turn possibility into progress. We build communities that empower. We create conversations that spark action. We lead with conscience, collaboration, and courage. The future isn't written by algorithms. It is shaped by people who choose to lead differently. People who combine intelligence with compassion, innovation with integrity, and data with purpose. We are the world leaders in data and AI. Together, we are designing a world that is intelligent, inclusive, and deeply human.
To the AI Talk Show, the talk show that happens every week and really bringing leaders from the industry to talk about it. I'm Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of World Leaders in Data and AI. And every week we are bringing you the sharpest mind in data and AI to make sure that we're cutting through the noise. We're talking about what actually is happening in the field right now so that we can bring real examples and have the real conversation. Today, we are going to be talking about something I hear about from a lot of data leaders constantly. We are investing in AI. We've stood up the tools. So why aren't we seeing the results? You know, a lot of the conferences are talking about it, and a lot of the panels I'm on are talking about this. So the answer more often is not what comes back to us from the AI solution, but it really comes down to or boils down to data, not just the technology, but the data underneath this fancy, shiny object of AI. My guest today has spent last 2 decades at Thoughtworks and the last several years leading their global data modernization practice. He's also co-authored research with MIT Technology Review on the same exact topic. So I'm really excited about this conversation because I know that his work with enterprises across different industry, like healthcare or life sciences, it really gives him the exposure in real life on how to take AI projects at scale. So with that, John, I want to welcome you to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Asha. It's a pleasure to be here.
John, we're going to dive into your experience, what you're seeing, and really learn from what is happening in the world right now. But before we get started, I'd love to get a little bit of peek into your career, where you are today, and what have you actually, the different stages of technology evolution.
Yes, well, I've been a data practitioner for now 33 years. It was in 1993, I built the first dimensional data mart. And since then, I've been passionate about how do you take disparate data from different source systems, different solutions, and bring it all together to drive insight. So it's been a really interesting journey for me over the past 30 years and seeing how the technology has evolved, but particularly most recently, this massive disruption. I studied AI back in college in the 80s, but what we're experiencing now is truly different. It's truly transformational.
What would be one thing I'm curious, you've probably watched big data, data lakes, digital transformation, but this current AI moment feels a little different for, I think, a lot of us who've been in the industry for a while. What is one thing about this time genuinely surprises you, something you didn't see coming?
Yes, I would say the biggest surprise for me is how truly disruptive this experience is because the tools and the technologies can achieve so much more than we expected 3, 4, 5 years ago that we're constantly rethinking our assumptions, our preconceptions, those best practices that we've been using for years. So I've seen our practitioners in the field take practices, how I move from prototype to development and say, well, with AI now, with the tools that are available in generating code and actually analyzing the content, I can achieve things that used to take weeks in minutes and hours. And so it has completely changed it. And we have to constantly challenge our assumptions because, well, those assumptions were based on constraints we faced in the past, and those constraints seem to be disappearing.
I agree with you completely. I feel like, a lot of us who are now using AI in our day-to-day life, I mean, you can see the benefit of it. I mean, how quickly we can actually look at our calendar, summarize our meetings, get back to our stakeholders, look at our investment reports. And I think the efficiency gains definitely are very obvious. But I think what really happens is and really today's conversation is a gap between AI strategy that get announced in the boardroom and what really actually happens in the production. Like, yes, because you and I are using AI, we see the benefit. I think individually we get so excited about what we see, the promise of AI. But when you think about enterprises, the discussion in boardroom and discussion on the ground is very different. And you are talking to customers every day. What are companies actually discovering once they get into the world of productionizing these AI solutions?
Well, that's the key. The word you use there, productionizing, is
Yeah.
we've had the past few years, it's been great to build a number of proof of concepts or demonstrations of how processes could work. But that move from a very cool demo in a boardroom to
Right.
a production agent that is actually taking the responsibilities for a particular business function, there's still a gap there. And the reason, or one of the reasons, and the one that I'm most familiar with, is the agent's ability to make decisions and take actions based on the quality of information available to them. And so we were talking about data, but at that level, it's the agents are processing information. So we'll talk about how making data into information is so critical, which is something we've been doing for years, but now it's so much more important because you have a machine consuming that and making rapid decisions much more rapidly than ever in the past.
They say the old saying is always stands true is like, keep it simple, engage your users early on. It's important to build a strategy, but make sure that you have all the right stakeholders around. Governance is still important and very important as we play with a very strong technology like AI. But when you really think about these AI projects, because there is so much excitement, I feel like sometimes the technology gets ahead of the foundation. It's just, you're trying to build this technology that shows a huge promise, but then where's the foundation? So now companies are paying the price if they're not really investing in the foundation. So let's talk about what the foundation actually needs to look like. Everyone right now is using the phrase AI ready data. Uh,
Mhm.
it's on every vendor slide. It's every conference agenda we are talking about it. But what does it actually mean in practice? What does it look like on the ground, for your clients?
Yes, well, for our clients, the experience that we have is that translation of data that as human beings we can consume and question our decisions, whereas an agent will. I always like to say that agents might be wrong, but they're very confident.
Yeah.
And so an AI solution that you build, a large language model, is going to make decisions based on the available data and based on all of the training that is experienced by consuming all of this information. The challenge with that is when training against all languages, against all information or knowledge in the public, in each enterprise, each organization, there is a very specific language. There's a very specific body of knowledge that tends to be unique to that organization. Obviously, when you're in a particular industry like life sciences or financial services, there's a language common across the organizations. But when you go into individual companies, there's always that question. When we go into some organizations, let's talk about what you call a customer. Let's talk about the process for submitting a bill. And so all of these definitions, all of these semantics need to be translated so that the information available in the organization aligns with the consumption by the large language model.
I think very well said, because I think that you don't have the common language, when you're looking at the data. If you're not building we always said, have the in legacy system, you're building these data warehouses and lakes, and you're consolidating your data, and you're doing that because you want to make sure that the output is something that the consumer can trust. It's quality and it's trustworthy information. And I love what you started with. How do you translate that data into information becomes really, really critical. What are you seeing? I mean, I feel like we started on this journey, the Gen AI journey, late 2022. 2023 was all about, getting ready for Gen AI. And now in 2026, we're talking about agentic AI. What are you seeing that the journey from Gen AI to agentic AI? What have you seen that has worked in some of the field, the customers you're working with? And where are the biggest challenges you see that they are facing?
Yeah, so and unsurprisingly, like many practitioners out there, the places where we're seeing the most success, the most impact, is in using these tools specifically in building solutions in legacy migrations and helping organizations shift their systems to more modern platforms and AI first software development. So those practices are very impactful. Where organizations are struggling more is where they're trying to apply similar practices to their business functions. And what we find is that their processes, their definitions, their handoffs, their organization, the silos they've created, these are challenges, these are impediments that is very difficult for the AI solutions, for the models to work around. And so having I'll use the word sloppy architecture, having sloppy processes and sloppy definitions, these are things that will hamper your AI from being successful.
And where are you seeing the successes? Like, what are the organization doing right that are getting them the results?
Right. So those organizations that are moving beyond purely the software development and the data engineering,
Yeah.
those practices, the ones that are actually applying it to the businesses are identifying particular areas where they can drive the most benefit, or they're going in and saying, listen, we're going to re-engineer our processes. We're going to rethink how we deliver this particular service. And they're recognizing that this will require redesigning some of the systems and the processes and sometimes the culture to support it. So you see organizations who are using AI for customer service, so the customer relationship management, and the CSRs in the field, and having them replaced. Those organizations that went wholesale and just threw AI at it, in many cases, had to step back. It was those organizations that were more thoughtful about how are we going to augment the capabilities of the individual? How are we going to make sure we have the right experience driven for their consumers? Those are the organizations that are being more successful.
John, I see a lot of companies focusing on optimizing. A lot of companies are really focusing on figuring out, how do I optimize what I have? How do I create efficiencies? And a lot of times when I'm at conferences or I'm running workshops, most people will raise their hand that they're sitting in this optimizer quadrant. And then there are some people, like you mentioned, rethink your business model, rethink about your business processes, but they're very far and few in between. It's great to have the AI to create efficiencies, but I think there is a lot more need for optimizing rethinking your business model and your processes, because you don't want to optimize something that doesn't work right now. So it's a great time for you to really think about how you're going to rethink your business and re-engineer your processes to get the right optimization. I also have a few companies I talked to are thinking about it for innovation. So life sciences drug development is a great example, or for CPG, how they launch new products is another great example. And lastly, I see organizations who are thinking just to capture their market. They're reaching, how do I upsell, cross-sell, get more market share? So in my book, I actually talk about those 4 quadrants. But what I really want to focus on is the risk. It's great in boardrooms you talk about, how do you really think about, I can grow my organization, I have this AI for my strategy purposes, competitive edge, but then AI for risk and compliance. Where do you draw the line? Where and how the organization should be thinking about? And of course, risk is big because there's unforeseen circumstances. How this technology is going to show up, nobody knows. So what are you hearing? What are you seeing as you are, stepping in the world to talk about risk and governance?
Yes, it's a great question, and it is absolutely on top of everyone's mind. And it is the concern that impedes many organizations from going to production and scale. What are all the risks of doing this? What are we opening ourselves up to in terms of exposing information, of potentially creating, we've had all the humorous incidents a few years ago of how do you glue rocks on a pizza and that sort of thing. But organizations are very concerned about any responses that go out that could be misinterpreted by an individual. First and foremost, it's a simple solution, and it sounds simplistic maybe, but it is very fundamental to solving these problems of thinking of the human in the loop. Where exactly is the individual placed that can ensure that any decisions that are being made, any recommendations, any interactions are governed in a way that will prevent them from becoming extremely risky. So that if a device is if a chatbot is giving some sort of advice it shouldn't be giving, if it is making decisions or taking actions, there's some sort of governance mechanism. And that could be a combination of a human in the loop and traditional controls, operational controls that we've put in place in automated systems in the past. But there are other risks the organizations are concerned about. Talking about the life sciences and the healthcare industry, and having been involved in building FDA regulated medical devices in the past, we look at the concerns about patient information safety and privacy. And with these models now, and with the capabilities they present, the controls that we put in the past may and most likely are not sufficient. So one of the areas that focus on particularly is that patient anonymity, keeping any usable data, any health data that might expose information about a patient's health, an individual's current state. This all must be protected underneath our HIPAA regulations. And so one of the methods that's been put in place is the expert determination, that you use a very rigorous set of statistical methods to ensure that somebody can't piece together different aspects of the data set to come back and say, oh, I don't have the name, I don't have the address, but I know this is John Spens, or I know this is Asha. And now it has been demonstrated, not in any particular break-ins or any big public issues, but it has been demonstrated in the lab that the models can work around those controls. So now we have this exposure of information. There's also all of the concerns about the training data too and how they're created. So as an organization looks at this, there's a multidimensional approach they must put to risk management. What is my exposure from the behavior of the models? What are some of the potential risks about exposing the data or consuming the data through the model? What about how the model was built itself? And so the governance organizations have expanded dramatically, and we've seen many companies really invest in it.
I agree with you. I've been talking to a lot of CIOs who actually are involving the CISOs, because for them, the guardrails, the governance, the compliance is so on top of their mind right now that they are looking for solutions. And I actually lined up taking a board role with an organization called xnode.ai, because they provide that governance control plane. I mean, having a control plane that can actually control, how to govern your data, how to put the guardrails, how to do the observability, observe your models and make sure you validate your models. And I think that is really critical. So you're right. Even though we are a technology optimist, we are AI optimists, we need to be careful about how these models are reacting, and having the human in the loop is so critical. I think you see this news every single day that companies are trying to sue Anthropics or OpenAI because of the breach. But the truth is that you cannot have these agents make autonomous decision yet, because we really need to have the human in the loop. And for the people who are listening right now, I want to talk about the governance, because the governance generally is the hardest to sell in the organization. It's slow, it's invisible, and a lot of time people think that that's a roadblock to innovation. So also you're competing for budgets, because AI is a shiny tool. So the people who are listening right now, maybe CDO, maybe a head of data or VP of engineering, and they're nodding their head as they're listening to us, and they're recognizing that in their own organization, they're probably facing this every single day. What's one thing that they should do, in the morning that would help them sell the idea of AI specifically for producing ROI, knowing that all what we spoke about, all the challenges we spoke about are real?
I would say their first step is to consider, if they're thinking about how does this impact my business, and there is a point you brought up before, you have to be thinking about it from a standpoint of disruptive change. And that point I brought up early in the conversation, at the beginning of the conversation. Where are there opportunities to eliminate the existing constraints in the organization? So thinking about what are the opportunities to demonstrate true ROI. One of the clients I'm working with right now is a chief data officer, and he's addressing those very issues that you mentioned before. There's a lot of people in the organization. The adoption of the company, don't want to do brands out here, but one of either the AI company across the organization has been very high, but it's all of these little local optimizations. So a number of people are making their lives a little easier, but it's not changing big numbers, big issues in the organization. So he is looking at it from where are there opportunities to disrupt, and who are the people I need to partner with. So the starting point is finding those people who will drive the innovation in the organization. That may be in the technical space, that may be in the business space, but finding those people who are going to drive that for you, and building the story, building the narrative that will enable them to execute.
Isn't it funny that it's always about the people, even though this is technology and it's getting the technology is easy? That the top 5 companies are investing so much money in it, and we train these models and we can now pick and choose these models. But really, who is leading it is the question. I tell you, I lined up starting the whole organization because of that. The whole World Leaders organization started because I wanted to make sure that the leaders come together to help each other, to make sure that we lead AI in this era more effectively, more responsibly, more ethically. And I think that quest, I didn't even know where we would get to, but that quest has led us to where we have the leaders in the organization. We actually have the CIO group, the tech leaders, then we have the CEO, the business leaders, and then we also have the board governance. So the board members of publicly traded companies who come together to see how they can learn from each other, and then actually launch ethical, responsible AI at scale within organization, within their enterprises, for good. I think for the first time, I've seen, John, that as a technology leader, this is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to execute effectively, even though you're optimists. As engineers, we love playing with new technology, but we need to do it more responsibly. I think, that moment of impact is now, as how we create the history with the data that we work with, and that's why the foundation is so important. You've worked 2 decades in data modernization. What is one thing, I would say, maybe if you had to give away before we close, one thing that you want to give a gift to the audience, maybe on a big ambitious note, that if an organization gets data modernization right for AI and truly get it right, what does it actually look like? What is possible with doing that right for launching AI at scale?
Well, it's the opportunity to truly empower agents to make supply chain decisions, to drive, even potentially driving treatment plans, of coming back with decisions and being able to make them more effectively, and us being able to trust those decisions, and therefore thereby removing some of the controls that we may have to put in initially to more effectively accelerate business processes. So I mentioned supply chain, and you think about the opportunity we had. We went from just in time to just in case, to
Yeah.
all of the issues that are going on around the globe right now, and the ability for consumer packaged goods manufacturers to be able to make split-second decisions and reroute their entire, or redesign their entire supply chain based on a political issue or weather issue. That can happen if those agents can make the right decisions, and that's all based on their ability to get the right information.
I'm just so excited about the future, because we are, if you want it or not, moving into a direction where we're going to be having co-workers who are going to be our agents. We
That's
are
right.
moving towards the organization which are moving from task-based to capacity-based. So it's not going to be, John is a data analyst and Asha is a financial analyst, and this is our jobs. But it's going to be, what, as data analyst, financial analyst, a controller coming together, or a supply chain manager coming together, uh, providing the output. What is the capacity for the organization? It could be, Amy, the digital human, or John, the real human, working together in collaboration. And so I lined up spending about 18 months researching on what would our new world look like when digital human and real human are working together in collaboration, because the functional area, the titles are going to be start merging together to give you that output of, the tangible output that the organization really need for success. So it's not just about you or me, it's about 50 tasks that can be divided into, the coworker, your coworker, and you, to be able to give that output. So I think it's an exciting world, John, because we are moving towards progress. Technology has always given us progress. If you think about, from telecom to where it has come, the whole telecom industry has come from where it was just 30 years back. We would have never imagined where we've landed now, to big data revolution. I mean, data truly, I mean, we remember when big data came out and we would talk about data as the new oil. And now
Mhm.
AI is using the nuggets of data to be able to produce, really magic. I mean, we would have never thought that ChatGPT or AI model can answer the way it answers all these questions, 30 years back. So there is a lot of promise, but how we lead as people really will dictate how the organization are progressing. And I think so it's about how we all come together, how we continue evolving, how we continue learning, and we continue launching our own agents and playing with this technology. I think that's another important piece, is that, are you hands-on? Are you really learning to play and engage with this technology to continue developing? And are you encouraging your teams to use AI to, enhance their own skills? The job replacement is very real. Upskilling is very real, or reskilling or upskilling, whatever term you feel comfortable with, is very real. How we are preparing our next generation of leaders is very important. And I do truly believe it's curiosity, lifelong learning, experimenting, jumping in, not sitting on the sideline becomes a lot more important than ever before. With that, I want to come to a close. Thank you so much, John, for coming to the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. And to our audience, thank you for being here. Keep asking the hard questions, keep demanding the real answers, and we'll see you next time at the AI Talk Show. Take care, everyone. Thank you. And thank you, John.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you so much.